for the last 50 years. And to be honest, because I was so young when I read it, I'm not sure I understand why. I'm sure there was a lot of stuff in it that's socially unacceptable. But a lot of stuff like that went over my head back then, and to be honest, still does. It's about a human being who was raised on Mars by Martians. And right away, some of you have just hit the off button. Can't believe we're talking about science fiction. All this stuff is stupid. But when he is brought to Earth, he brings with him all these strange ideas about money and religion and society. Let me ask you this question. Have you heard the word grok? Grok. How many of you heard the word grok? Really? No more than that? Okay. I only heard it in the last couple of weeks, except for in this book back in the 1960s. It's a word that comes from that novel, and it's being used in modern technology now. It has to do with artificial intelligence. And grok means not only do I understand what you're saying, I feel what you're saying. I identify with what you're... it's a much deeper thing than saying, oh, I see. I grok you. Now, some of you said you recognize where the book title came from. Where does it come from?
I remember it from this TV show, Paladin. Of being a stranger in a strange land.
Really? Paladin. Paladin, Paladin, where do you roam? I remember the theme song. I remember it was a Western. But since you're older than me, I don't remember exactly what it was about. Okay. Moses names one of his sons. Isn't that right? Moses? Gershom? Isn't it one of Moses' sons? Gershom is because he's a stranger in a strange land. Well, Moses' whole life is being a stranger in a strange land, isn't it? So it's from Exodus. So Robert Heinlein, the author, took that title from Exodus 2:22, if you want to see and confirm. Something that I think we need to bear in mind as we look at the culture around us, and because our only experience is the life we have lived, to us it looks so much worse than anybody else could have ever had to live through. So much of what we get in our culture comes from something called the Enlightenment. Now, if you didn't like history in high school, and they started talking about the Enlightenment and philosophy that comes from the Enlightenment, you probably put on the off button and ignored it. But it's pretty important to how you think today about who you are and about how you're supposed to fit in society. It's very you've been strongly influenced. Are you an individual? Do you believe that you should be able to decide what's right and wrong for yourself? Do you believe that you should be able to choose that you're going to do this and that you're going to do that you have choices? Do you believe that? Those are pretty much Enlightenment concepts. And it was the Enlightenment began within a world that was, yes, we believe there is a creator, there is a God, and then it gradually began to push that away. One of the things that I have way too long been proud of is that if you tell me something is true, I'm not going to just believe you anymore. And that makes me a skeptic, right? I'm skeptical that what you told me is true. I have to say that for the first 24 years of my life, I wasn't skeptical about anything. And I ran into a man in Corpus Christi when Robin and I first got married and moved to our first jobs in Corpus Christi, Texas, who told me the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well. Anybody know that story? And I had read that story, been told that story, heard sermons about that story my entire life for 24 years. And there were things that I was supposed to get from that story that I would never have picked out of that story on my own. He pointed to things in that story, and we'll do that sometime in the fall, break that down a little bit. But it changed the way I looked at what I had been taught all my life. Do I just accept? And I'd love to point out specific things, but we have to get to a point where you trust me a little bit before I can start doing stuff like that, because I'll lose some of you, I think. But I love this quote when I came across it. Dallas Willard was an American Christian philosopher in the 20th century. I don't know where he worked or taught or anything. Mac probably does. Where? California, okay. Which automatically means we can't believe anything he says, right? Because California is not part of the real world. But I love what he said about this, about you might not even be smarter than a cabbage, but if you act skeptical about everything, you look intelligent. People will think you're smart. Anyway, the Enlightenment, I think, was in many ways a good thing, a good influence on how we treat one another. It was questioning things. People were on a quest, wrestling with God, which, the name Israel, he who wrestles with God. I think sometimes in our churches, at least when I was a kid, we discouraged that. You don't wrestle. This is what this verse means. This is what this verse means. This is what you must do. And there's no debate, no questioning, nothing. I think that there are a lot of things that came out of that, a lot of good things. For instance, I appreciate the development of things that contribute to human flourishing, like I am thankful for air conditioning. Okay? Now, the Enlightenment didn't come up with that, but the idea that human beings should be able to be comfortable comes from that. I appreciate indoor plumbing that actually washes the stuff away from my house. Okay? I appreciate that. I appreciate electricity. I appreciate the freedom to think and to reason and the freedom to say what I think. I'm often inclined to not say what I think because I want to try to get along with people sometimes. When you were growing up, we have some different age groups here, but the people in my generation, when you were growing up, when people said you can be anything you want when you grow up, what were they talking about? What, say it? You can be a doctor. You can be a lawyer. I don't know if we aspired to be politicians, did we? But yeah, you can be a doctor or a lawyer. You can be a fireman. Did you ever watch those little kid shows back then? What do you want to be when you grow up? Art Linkletter. How many of that rings a bell for who? Oh, not as many as I expected. Okay. So y'all aren't as old as me. Anyway, he would ask 5- and 6-year-olds, and they wanted to be a fireman. They wanted to be a policeman. And they're looking to be a hero, right? That's what I want to be. That's who I admire. When people talk to kids now, you and I, if we ask them what they want to be when they grow up, this is kind of what we're expecting, right? What is it now? When I grow up, well, this lady, I think she's in Scandinavia somewhere, she said, I've decided I want to be a disabled woman. And I think it's really a man. But said, I want to be a disabled woman. That's what I've always felt like I was and what I thought I should be. And then there are furries. I think I'm a cat. I think I'm a fox. And that's what I want to grow up to be. Or I think I'm a woman. And I think I'm a woman athlete. And I bet I can beat all the other women athletes. Or maybe I think I'm a potato. One of the things I want to talk about in this class is sacred cows. How do we avoid creating sacred cows as a group and personally? And I want to ask you, do you think there are sacred cows in the Restoration movement? Yes, no? Now, I have to tell you, a sacred cow could be sitting right here on my face, and I might not see it, right? I can't see it. I can't identify it. Are there sacred cows, you think, in this church? One of the things you'll have to understand about me being the teacher in this class is that there are a lot of times when I'm just going to leave you with questions because I don't have answers either for a lot of stuff. Being an elder in the church does not mean you've found all the answers. Sometimes it means you have lifelong quests for finding, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this? Now, I want to ask you a question about words. Has vocabulary changed in your lifetime? Even those of you who are like 18, during your lifetime, some words mean something different than what they did when you were growing up, right? And imagine that being multiplied when you're in your 70s or 80s. Can you think of a story in the Bible where messing up the vocabulary was a way to cause division in the culture? Laura.
The word shibboleth, meaning you were actually Jew was killed because they couldn't pronounce it in their tongue.
That's brilliant. I never thought of that. Do y'all remember the story where enemy soldiers, when they were crossing the Jordan was being guarded by the Israelites, and some people couldn't say the word shibboleth. They could only say sibboleth because it was not a part. Was not a part of their culture. Now, apparently, there are no women in this culture. Come on. I'm kidding. Anyway, I never thought of that one, Laura. That's brilliant. Where you could decide who was part of your culture by how they pronounced a word. And you know what they did with the ones who couldn't say shibboleth? They killed them because they were the enemy. And that's how you knew they were the enemy. Anyway, that's not the story I was thinking of, but I wish I had thought of that. Tower of Babel, exactly. Was that you? Yes, thank you. The Tower of Babel. And who initiated that? Who instigated that? God. He didn't want them to be united in this one task, right? We're not going to go into why God wanted them to separate and split up and stuff. But God used this tool, changed the words, changed the meaning of the words. Everybody's speaking words that mean something different one to another. Now, word meanings have always evolved, right? We're familiar with that. But at the Tower of Babel, God knows if they can't talk to each other anymore, they can't work together. Is that happening in any culture you know about? Where the words change meaning so you can't communicate? Ours today, yeah. Do you feel sometimes like you're being assaulted by language that's meant to mislead you? To say something that you think, oh, yeah, and then you realize what they mean by those words. I want you to throw some words at me that you think have changed meaning in your lifetime. Just shout them out. Did you say golf? Goat. That's in my list. Thank you. Goat. What did goat mean when you were a kid? What? A farm animal. Yeah, that's one. Bad
luck, Silver.
Bad luck. Yeah, it was bad luck. And why is that? Do you know?
I think it's something to do with the goat went out on the Chicago Cubs field and they didn't win afterwards.
That's exactly right. It has to do with a goat. Yeah. And I don't know the story, but I know it has to do with a goat at Wrigley Field in Chicago. What other word? Oh, wait. What does goat mean now?
Greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time. Now, when I was a kid, if you were the one who booted the grounder that would have gotten the last out in the game in the ninth inning, you were the GOAT. okay? If you were the guy who bobbled the foul ball that would have won the College World Series, and you didn't catch it and it just fell to the ground, you were the GOAT, right? Yeah, and that comes from, of course, ancient Israel and the scapegoat. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but that's exactly. Thank you, Don. I didn't think of that either. What other words can you think about that have changed? What? Yeah. Did that change in your lifetime? No. I'm thinking about, don we now our gay apparel, fa la la, fa la 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 la. Well, do we even sing that anymore? I do, okay, and I almost want to stop singing and say, but not gay the way you think, because it's not that gay. What did it mean then? Happy, boisterously happy, celebratory. Here are some of mine. The word troll. What was a troll when you were growing up? Yeah, it was a monster under a bridge, yeah. Now, it still kind of has that connotation, right? But it's a, what is it now? Where do you find trolls? Social media, yes, on the internet, you find trolls. Now, they are still monsters, okay? But it's a different thing. How about viral? That means something different now? It used to have something to do with an illness. And still, the way something spreads is still viral, so it still has a little bit of the meaning. What about tweet? Now, I'm not saying the older meaning of the word is always better, okay? I'm just saying it's just different. And if somebody who'd been asleep like Rip Van Winkle for 20 years came back and started to listen to people talk, wouldn't they be lost? It's a different language. Here's my favorite one on the list, tag. Think about all the meanings that tag had before it became an internet thing where you tag somebody, or it became a ghetto thing where you tag paint on walls or on railroad cars. That's the ones I noticed the most. Gabriel and I were pulling out of Philadelphia on an Amtrak and going to Washington, D.C., and I kept saying, look, Gabe, look at all the tags on all those railroad, and he was asleep, so he missed them all. But all the different kinds of tags. This is one I like a lot, catfish. I love catfish. What does that mean now? Right. Actually, I didn't know that. I didn't know that in that much detail. I knew it had to do with deception. But Mac's exactly right. It is to present yourself online in a way that it's not who you really are. I think people have been catfishing one another since the creation, but it wasn't as easy maybe as it is now. Here's one that I think is kind of funny. Thong. What was a thong when you were a kid? Now, for many of you, that was a swimsuit, right? For me, it was a flip-flop, okay? And for years, when I heard people talking about how much of a ruckus somebody caused by wearing a thong on the beach, my first thought was, why are they just wearing one? Because I wasn't keeping up with the culture. And we already talked about, Carol came up with the first one, the goat. That was the first one. What are some words that you can think of that just didn't exist 20 years ago? Go ahead and say them out loud. Skibbity. Now, I don't have that on my list. What does that mean?
It's a great question. Kids use it, and they're like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and we don't know. And drip, the word drip.
Drip? That's not a leaky sink, okay. Now, you think about this. What is their intent in creating these new words?
The intent is for the older people and outsiders not to know it, so that they have shibboleths.
Yeah.
They're creating their own culture.
Yeah. You're an outsider. And every generation does this, but not to the extreme of the last three. I would say people who were coming of age in the 60s accelerated this a lot. And then the pandemic accelerated it even more because everybody was so isolated. How about these? Do you know what Riz is? Riz? How many of you don't know? Nobody needs okay. It's charisma, basically. Instead of saying, this drove me nuts when my girls went to Harding because they would come home talking about going to the caf. You can't say the cafeteria? Because I don't know what you mean by going to the calf. Did Harding put up a golden calf? I don't know what you mean. And they had every word had been reduced to a syllable, and I just didn't understand anything that they were saying. It just drove me nuts. How about quiet quitting? Is that a new thing? Have you heard about it? How about Google it? What, 20 years ago, if somebody told you to Google it, what would you have done? Might have slapped them. What is ghosting? Did we already say that one? Ghosting? I thought somebody brought that up. Cringe? Now, cringe has been around for a long time, but now it's changed the way it's being used. This, instead of you are going to cringe when you hear this, this is so cringe. Well, to me, it sounds like you're really trying to avoid actually giving an accurate description of something because you can't articulate it. Cancel culture? Is that new? Okay. Woke, podcast, photobomb, binge watch. You know, there were only 170,000 English words when I was growing up, and I didn't think we needed more. I thought it was challenging enough. Okay, let me ask you this. Oh, my goodness. Let me ask you this question. What do you miss about church the way it used to be? Okay, you might have to think about that, and we may have to talk about it in September. What are some things we used to do in church but don't do anymore that you think we should? And then the last one that I'm going to throw at you, and I know it won't stick, and I know 3 weeks from now you won't remember anything. What are some different things you think our church should be trying to do? Thank you for your, yes, David. Rely on Jesus Christ. Anybody agree with that? Nobody. Oh, she does. Okay. It's you and me and her. Have we worn our hands out today? We can't do it anymore. Long week.
I learned the hard way that it was in the Bible and it relied on Jesus Christ. But I was kind of relying on myself. God come to me and through Jesus Christ and led me through a bad place.
That's a really good way to end today. Thank you, David. Relying on Jesus. Thank you very much for your participation. Thanks for learning the song with me. And I'll be throwing it back at you sometime soon. Thank you.
voice.